The headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. Observers from the Arab League are headed to 3 more Syrian cities today as part of an effort to assess the Assad regime's compliance with an Arab League plan to resolve the political crisis in that country. The plan calls for the withdrawal of state forces and weapons from residential areas, the release of political prisoners, and the establishment of dialogue between the government and the opposition. The Arab League effort has alarmed many Syrian activists, in part because the mission is headed by a Sudanese lieutenant general named Mustafa al-Dabi, who was once based in Darfur, where a prosecutor from the International Criminal Court says the Sudanese army carried out war crimes. On Wednesday, the Sudanese General Dabi said he saw, quote, nothing frightening in his initial tour of the city of Homs.
Activists in Syria say the Arab League monitors are being shielded from the ongoing violence in Syria, where over 5,000 people are believed to have been killed in the 9-month-long uprising. 3 dozen people were reportedly killed in Homs the day before the monitors arrived. On Wednesday, Syrian protesters in the city say they confronted Arab League peace monitors by displaying the dead body of a boy who they said was killed by Syrian government forces. Meanwhile, at least 6 people died in the city of Hama on Wednesday when forces opened fire on a group of thousands of anti-government protesters. Human Rights Watch says Syrian forces have transferred hundreds of prisoners in Homs to military installations where the observers are barred. For more on Syria, we're joined by 2 guests. Karim Nashar is a cyber activist who's working with Syrian protesters via various social media platforms. He's a PhD candidate at Princeton University in the History Department, specializing in the modern Middle East. Joining us from Damascus is a Syrian activist and filmmaker named Basil. He just returned from Homs. For security reasons, he asked we only use his first name. Basil, why don't we begin with you on the ground in Damascus, where protests are taking place, and you've just come out of Homs. Can you tell us what happened there?
Hey, good morning, Amy. I just got back from Homs yesterday after spending 1 week there. The heavy bombing and shelling of the city continued for several days till the night of the Arab League delegation's arrival. I witnessed tanks withdrawal from Homs the morning before the observers arrived. The problem is, now I'm calling you from Al-Midan area in Damascus. Activists has called for a protest in this area, and they expected the delegations, the monitors, to come and see the protest, but no one arrived here. And the security forces are cracking down the protesters. I can hear them running in the streets now, and they are besieged the protesters in one of the mosques here in the area. So we are wondering now why the delegations here they are cracking down on the protesters now, and we are wondering what are they doing here now.
And when you say bombing and shelling, you're saying that the Air Force was dropping bombs on the town as well as shelling it?
Bombing, it's missiles. Like, it's not a air bombing, but you can hear and see the bombing in the area. It's not like Air Forces one.
And in terms of the delegation, is the delegation traveling in one group from one town to another, or are they spread out so that some remain in Damascus while other parts of the delegation go out to different parts of the country?
Yeah, supposedly they have to stay in each city. Like, there's a group in Homs now, and another group supposed to go to Hama today. So, and yesterday there were clashes in Hama, and actually, I can hear the security forces outside of the room I'm in now. So I'm keeping my voice a little bit low. They're outside, Juan. So I need to keep my voice a little bit low. Sorry for that.
We can hear you just fine, Basil, but we want you to be very careful. You can tell us you can't talk. That is fine. We also have a guest here in the studio, Karim Nashar. But I do want to ask you about who is killing who in Homs, in Hama, in Damascus right now. Tell us who the forces are.
Actually, the violence in the city of Homs is what I saw the last week, I was there, like it's threatening to turn into like almost a civil war. A heavy crackdown on the city, punishing the rising area and killing the civilians, is forcing the locals to form like an armed resistance to the regime's forces, and they are supported by army deserters. So the fights is between the locals and the security forces and the supporters of the regime. The rising areas are besieged by the regime forces. I tried to cross to the besieged area of Baba Amr for 3 days, but I failed to enter this area. I witnessed and actually I was shot by snipers when I was trying to cross to these areas. People are forced to fight back, to block out the security forces and make their way out to provide food and supplies. So like they're putting the people in the position like they have to defend themselves. This is what I saw in Homs. But the violence is rising and the tension is like becoming more high there.
And Bassel, when you say snipers, are these snipers Syrian forces, or are they people in civilian garb? Is there any ethnic battling that's broken out as well?
The snipers are for the army, actually, and I'm sure for. And I was shot while trying to cross from area to area. I was like, they tried to shoot on all of the people trying to cross, and they are army forces.
Can you describe what you're hearing right now, Bassel? Again, we don't want you to endanger yourself. Stop talking if you have to. If you must leave, tell us.
I'm trying not to, like the activists with me in the house like tell me like I have to keep my voice a little bit low because they hear like a lot of troubles outside. Actually, the security forces are cracking against the protesters outside now.
Have you had trouble with security forces yourself before?
Yeah, I was arrested for a while.
And you were detained?
Yeah.
Karim Nashar.
Actually, a lot of my friends are still detained. Yesterday, they released around 700 detainees, but still thousands of detainees are still in the prisons. Among them are tens of my friends. They are not terrorists. They are filmmakers, journalists, doctors, lawyers. They are very high intellectuals, people, and activists.
Can you talk about the reports of prisoners, like you were once, but prisoners now, being moved from the city of Homs as they brought in the Arab League monitors?
Actually, this is a Human Rights Watch report. This is the only thing I heard about it, but it was leaked from the army itself. Some officer from the army leaked it to the Human Rights Watch.
And what about defecting officers, of defecting soldiers?
They are increasing, and I met some of them in Homs. They are supporting the locals, fighting back and trying to defend themselves. But the violence is rising in this city, and it's really, really dangerous. Like you cannot walk after 3 o'clock in the city. You will be shot, and you don't know from where it will come, from the army or from the locals. Like it's a total chaos there.
And how are the activists able to continue, like yourself and others, able to continue to organize and communicate to prepare either demonstrations or other opposition activities? Actually,
more than half of my friends in prison now. I have friends who've been killed. So we and a lot of them like flew out of the country now. They are based in Beirut or like somewhere outside of Syria, in Turkey also. So we are having a lot of troubles now. And
when you say killed, have they been killed in prison?
No, I have one of my friends have been killed while trying to cross the borders to Turkey. He's a doctor. And he was providing help for protesters, and they followed him, and he tried to cross the borders to Turkey, and they shot him on the border.
Bassel,
this is one of the cases.
You're incredibly brave to be in Syria right now as a filmmaker. What about the crackdown on the media? No Western reporters really able to in any way function openly there.
I heard of some journalists are being in Baba Amr now, or some there are some journalists succeed to sneak into Homs and other areas. And actually, when I held my camera and went to Homs, I went and shot some during this week. I was like holding weapons with me. Like if they discovered this camera in any way, I will be like in total dangers. So it's very dangerous to hold a camera and just like travel around the country.
We also have here Karum Nashar. I wanted to ask you about the role of the Syrian diaspora in what is going on in the continuing protest movement there in the country.
Well, to be honest, it's been quite instrumental from the very get-go. You know, this whole revolution was pretty dependent on the social media and also on YouTube, because if you don't have a video of a particular demonstration, then you don't have the demonstration at all. And, you know, arguing about the actual truthfulness of the entire revolution was dependent on the ability to produce videos that show unequivocally the demonstrations, you know, in particular cities with signs that prove these are cities inside Syria. And so, you know, once the activists take these films on their phones, internet is so slow in Syria, and it could always be cut off completely. And so it was up for the diaspora to basically get these videos through Skype or through Facebook pages from the actual activists on the ground, and then send them to, you know, the media, send them to Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, all the primarily Arabic-speaking news channels. And then at the beginning, they would tell us, you know, these videos are not really that good. Please get back to the activists and ask them to, you know, change their location, get a better shot, you know. And so this was one of the first ways in which a lot of the people abroad got involved, becoming the administrators of the pages on which all these videos were being uploaded, and from which the media was getting its footage. But then, you know, we became very heavily involved in other things, like, for instance, raising funds, and by that I mean humanitarian assistance for the families of the martyrs, you know, people that were killed by the regime. We send them sometimes medical assistance or money, food, clothing, and helping out also with technological equipment. You know, a lot of the phones that the witnesses from inside Syria use to call Al Jazeera, for instance, to report on what's happening, they can't use their cell phones, their Syrian cell phones, because these could be very easily intercepted by the government. And so we buy these satellite-enabled phones from Dubai, and then we send them through smuggling to inside the country. And these same phones can also be used to, you know, make the videos, basically, like show what's happening, sometimes through live streaming as well. And so this technological stuff was also extremely important. And so raising the funds, buying the stuff, and sending it inside was also very important. And the refugees, you know, now we have thousands of refugees in Lebanon and in Turkey. And so I know several groups also in the diaspora that are working on just humanitarian aid and assistance to the refugees in both countries.
Now, you must be aware, obviously, of the reports in the WikiLeaks cables of U.S. government support for opposition groups, even before the uprising in Syria. Is there any concern about that in terms of the U.S. government's involvement in helping to support the opposition movement, either financially or otherwise?
Well, you know, I always say there's a March 15, 2011 moment, and there's a post-March 15, 2011 moment. Of course, before the beginning of the revolution, and you know, when George Bush was in power, of course, there was a certain regime change plan on the part of the American administration, and there were certain ties that the administration here was trying to build with certain opposition figures, but that opposition, that older opposition that was always rooted, like, based outside the country and not really in touch with anyone inside, you know, they got the money, they started a couple of TV channels, I think, but that is just completely different from what started happening afterwards. Even now, the Syrian National Council, for instance, which is basically the biggest conglomeration of opposition parties, the vast majority of the members of the Syrian National Council are people that became involved as a result of the revolution itself. You know, there are certain senior figures in the council that were always based outside, but that money never went to them as members of the Syrian National Council now.
I wanted to go back to Basel. Basel, are you still there? The violence now in Dara, you are talking about the protests in Damascus and the Arab League monitors being in Hama. The history of Hama, where a massacre took place in 1982 under Hafez al-Assad, the father of Bashar al-Assad, the significance of this area, and what people are calling on these Arab League monitors to do.
Actually, I witnessed in Homs that the security forces are confused how to handle the peaceful protest while being watched and monitored by the observers. Like videos, we witnessed some videos where the protests happened in front of military and security barriers. People were chanting and accompanied with the observers, by the observers. And the regime thugs forced not to crack down on them, as they do usually. The problem with the size of the delegations, like there is a 20 persons only in Homs, 5 persons of the delegation in Hama, and the area they will cover. Like the security forces are confused with when they are presents, but they cannot cover all the areas in Damascus. The killing is is continued where there is no observers, but it stopped where the observers are there. So it's a very complicated thing. But people are very optimistic about this delegation. They are calling tomorrow for a Friday to crawl to the Freedom Squares. They want to start the sit-ins in squares in the cities, like Tahrir Square in Cairo. And they are very optimistic of this delegations. But what I saw today, no one came to the protest. So I'm afraid tomorrow, like, people will try to go to these squares and they will be shot. And it's very dangerous to try to go there. Last time in Homs, they went to the square of the main square in Homs. They killed over 100 persons there.